Bank of America issues a dire warning about a new segment of the economy that's suffering. And you may not feel too bad for these people, but what do you think this means for the silver price and gold price? Of course, we're going to cover that because, again, this is new information and something we haven't seen for decades here in the United States. But first, let's just cover what's going on for the average people in America. Does that include you? That includes me. We know that Americans have spent through their savings. We know that Americans right now have credit card debt that's at all-time highs, and we're paying interest rates that are also near all-time highs on that credit card debt. And it gets even more scary when we consider that those of us who have student loan debt are going to be required to start making payments again after an almost 3-year pause in the need to make your student loan payments. Does it feel like to you there's a freight train coming down the tracks heading at the U.S. economy? But when we look at what Bank of America is saying about a new segment of the economy that's struggling, it really raises the red flags. We've got big issues heading our way. And let's also briefly touch on the mortgage industry, housing. We all need a house, right? A lot of you have mortgages. A lot of young people that want to get a new house need to get mortgages. Mortgage rates are through the roof, the highest they've been since 2002. Yes, that's 20 years. That adds a huge additional expense onto anyone's monthly budget who needs to buy a house. Guys, things are getting scary out there. Now, we know what's going to happen when this economy really throws the brakes on, and it is coming. You need to be prepared mentally, monetarily. We could be heading into some very, very difficult times. And we know what our old friend Jerome Powell at the United States Federal Reserve will do when the big R word, recession, or even worse, potentially D word, depression. Of course, they'll call it something else, but nonetheless, they're going to have no choice but to fire up the old printing press, dilute the U.S. dollar, and we're going to watch the silver price and gold price go through the roof. If you're looking to buy gold, silver, or platinum, do yourself a favor and check out Pimbex, the online precious metals bullion dealer and sponsor of Ron's Basement. I was a happy customer before they offered to support the channel. You'll find they have the best prices, quality, and service. I think Pimbex is best, and you will too. And be sure to tell them that you're from Ron's Basement. Let's talk about Bank of America. They came out with a shocking report that the top income earners are actually struggling now. Now, do we feel sorry for those folks that are making, $125,000 and more? I want to read you a couple paragraphs from this report. This is from Fortune magazine, okay? Here's what it has to say. They're calling it a rich session. They come up with new words, a recession for the rich people. It says here, by most measures, six-figure earners are the elite of America's workforce. People making over $100,000 per year were the most likely to survive mass layoffs early in the pandemic. When work returned, most likely to be able to work remotely, saving themselves from exposure to the virus and the time and money spent commuting. Now, however, cracks are showing up in the top 25% of the income distribution. According to recent research from Bank of America, raising the possibility that a much feared rich session, those are people who can afford to take their families to Disney World every year, blow 10 grand on that. Rich session. Right? The people that have their kids in all the different select soccer or baseball, whatever, right? Rich session. Nothing against anybody that does that. Don't take it personally. But this rich session could be around the corner if the wealthy don't cheer up. This is where it gets interesting. Unemployment is rising fastest amongst households making $125,000 or more, the bank said in a recent note based on analysis of their deposit data. As of last month, the number of high-income households receiving unemployment benefits was about 70% higher than the year before, more than double the rise in the lowest income brackets. Investing in silver and gold can be difficult at times. I want you to know you always have a refuge here in the basement with me, where we can have some camaraderie and support for one another as we navigate these choppy waters. I'll put out a new video every day, something valuable about silver and gold. It would be my honor if you join me. Please subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up. So rich people, high income earners are getting laid off, but let's talk about something real quick. I want to touch on this. Just because somebody makes a lot of money in income, that doesn't make them rich. A lot of these rich people from an income perspective still spend more than they bring in. Okay? And they don't have anything when you factor in how much debt they have. They don't have equity in anything. They've got home equity loans. They have loans on their cars. They have credit card debt possibly. So just because you make a big income doesn't mean you're wealthy. You could have a guy or woman who makes $60,000 a year but only spends like they make $40,000 and saves, maybe buys some silver or gold, right? Think about that. And they're actually better off than the person making $250,000 who spends like they're making $350,000. I digress. All right. That continues a trend that started at the beginning of 2023, but has become more pronounced this summer. More and more high-income earners are being laid off, but it gets very critical that we understand something. It says, what is a rich session? And how serious is this data? To understand what's going on, you have to rewind back to the beginning of the year. No surprise that wages for the top income bracket have been flat this year, according to Bank of America. So their wages, the top income earners, have been flat, whereas the middle and the lower income earners have been actually making small increases. The typical worker might justifiably ask, so what? The recent downturn in the professional classes' fortunes is just a blip against the backdrop of stagnating wages for the lower and middle classes. The staggering gains for the top 10% that has continued for over 4 decades. The top income earners did better and better than those of us in the middle or on the bottom. But the slowdown for the tippy top could presage a bigger slowdown in consumer spending. That's the big key. Bank of America notes, as a result of the relative job insecurity, quote, it is possible for higher income households may be feeling a little more cautious to this point, the bank wrote. Indeed, consumer sentiment has been weakening for this group over this year. So that's the big kicker. These people that make $125,000, $200,000, $250,000, they make up a huge portion of the consumer spending that goes on every year in this country. And that's where it gets scary. These are the people that went to Disney World, dropped $10,000 to go spend a week with their family because they work 80 hours a week during the normal year, and they're miserable at Disney World. Anyway, I digress. These are the people that go out to eat at these fancy upper scale restaurants, you know, where you're paying $30 a plate. They're starting to back off. And this is the first time that we've seen this in a long, long time. You know, I know, the people in the middle, the upper middle, it's been difficult all along. But now, for the first time in a long time, we're seeing cracks in those people that make these huge salaries. And that could be a big trouble sign for the economy because, again, these people spend their money, not all of them, but most of them, like there's no tomorrow. They got to have a new car every 3 years. They've got to go to the right restaurants. Their kids are on select baseball teams, so they travel all over and they stay at fancy hotels and they got to keep up with the other parents that have their kids on the baseball team, so they all have to go out to dinner together at fancy restaurants. Again, nothing against that. I'm not casting judgment. I'm just saying that's the reality of upper class life in the United States. And when there's a big crack in that, that could be a huge warning for the economy. And when the economy really starts to slow down, like we talked about at the beginning, Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve, they're going to have but one option, right? They're not going to let the whole system implode. They're beholden, right? They have an interest. They're doing well. They're going to print. They're going to deflate the U.S. dollar even further. That's not going to hurt them. That's going to hurt people in the middle and the lower end of the spectrum, like we've been through for the last 3 or 4 years. So be prepared. I choose to protect myself by owning some physical silver. I think it's a smart move. I think it's a great way to maintain wealth and have an option, right? A possibility that it could actually increase real wealth as we head into the coming years and decades. Hey, you know I appreciate you joining me here in the basement. Thank you. Okay, I hope you're doing well. And in the meantime, go watch a live stream.